Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Gold Rush Parker Schnabel forced to face his biggest fear. Gold Rush veteran Parker Schnabel talked about facing a huge fear of his during Season 14. In the 10 years Parker has been mining the Canadian Yukon Territory, he has never made such a big gamble. Keep reading to see what fork in the road Parker Schnabel had to face and what his ultimate decision was. Parker Schnabel faces a huge decision for his team. Parker Schnabel has mined in the Canadian Yukon Territory for over 10 years. During that time, he has never faced as big of a gamble as he did during the Season 14 premiere of Gold Rush. He spoke to people about the difficult decision he had to make and why it felt like a fork in the road. We were at a real fork in the road in terms of taking on way bigger risks, spending a pile of money on new ground or downsizing, Parker said during his interview with People. We had this really big choice to make early on in the season, and those big decisions matter quite a bit. In the last few moments of the season premiere, Parker had to decide whether or not to spend $15 million to obtain Dominion Creek. The land could potentially hold $160 million worth of gold. However, Dominion Creek is also 40 feet underground, so Parker will also have to spend millions to be able to unearth any of it. Despite what he stood to gain, the decision to spend $15 million was hard for him. What's next on Gold Rush for Parker? That kind of investment would put a lot of pressure on anyone. The Gold Rush star's business has grown significantly over the years. Parker knows that his family and the families of his crew depend on the business and the decisions he makes. I probably would have rather lost money and kept the team as a whole than downsized, honestly, Parker said, adding, getting out of business entirely would possibly be more appealing to him than downsizing at this point. Keeping everything going takes a lot of revenue. We need a lot of ground, and we need a lot of ounces out of the ground to stay afloat. Because we're a big operation, Parker told People. Breaking up the crew he has spent a decade building is his biggest fear at this point. Only time will tell if purchasing Dominion Creek was the right move for Parker Schnabel and his crew. He said that they wouldn't know if it was worth it from a profit standpoint for several more years. Gold Rush airs on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Discovery Channel. The entire series is also available to stream on Max. Parker Schnabel had never been one to back down from a challenge. As the star of Discovery Channel's hit series Gold Rush, he had faced countless obstacles in his quest to mine gold in the unforgiving wilderness of the Yukon. But this season, Parker would be forced to confront something far more daunting than treacherous terrain or malfunctioning machinery, his biggest fear. It began with a letter. Crisp and yellowed with age, it had arrived at his remote mining camp in a battered envelope, bearing a postmark from a small Alaskan town Parker had never heard of. His name was scrawled in a looping script across the front, and curiosity got the better of him. He tore open the envelope to find a letter from an elderly man named Jonas McGregor, who claimed to have been a friend of Parker's late grandfather, John Schnabel. Dear Parker, the letter began, I hope this letter finds you well. If you're reading this, then my time has come, and I have left behind a legacy that only you can uncover. Your grandfather and I discovered something extraordinary years ago, deep in the Alaskan wilderness. We swore to keep it a secret until the time was right. Now, I fear the time has come. Enclosed, you'll find a map to the location. It's time for you to face your destiny. Parker stared at the map, his mind racing. He had always admired his grandfather, who had been a legend in the mining community. But what could be so important that it had been kept secret all these years? The thought of uncovering something his grandfather had been part of ignited a fire within him. Yet a knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach. The map led to a remote and perilous region of Alaska known as the Valley of Shadows, a place Parker had heard whispered about in hushed tones. The Valley of Shadows was notorious among miners. It was said to be cursed, a place where many had entered but few had returned. The stories told of treacherous ravines, unpredictable weather, and eerie, unexplainable occurrences. But what scared Parker the most were the rumors of the valley being haunted by the spirits of those who had perished there. Parker had never believed in ghosts or curses. He was a man of reason and science, grounded in the tangible world of mining. Yet the thought of venturing into the Valley of Shadows to uncover his grandfather's secret made his skin crawl. The fear was irrational, he knew, but it was there nonetheless, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. Despite his apprehension, Parker couldn't shake the feeling that he had to go. He gathered his crew, Rick Ness, his loyal right-hand man, Carla Ann, the tough and resourceful wilderness guide, and Mitch Blaschke, the mechanic who could fix anything with an engine. They were skeptical but supportive, willing to follow Parker into the unknown. The journey to the Valley of Shadows was grueling. They traversed dense forests, crossed raging rivers, and climbed steep, rocky inclines. As they neared the valley, the weather grew colder, the sky a perpetual gray that seemed to sap the color from the world. A sense of foreboding hung in the air, thick and oppressive. On the third day, they reached the valley. It was a desolate place, the ground littered with twisted trees and jagged rocks. The air was eerily still, and a heavy silence enveloped them, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the gravel. Parker unfolded the map, his hands trembling slightly. The destination was a cave, marked with an X on the map. They found the cave hidden behind a curtain of vines, its entrance yawning like the mouth of a beast. Parker hesitated, the shadows within seeming to beckon him forward. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Let's go," he said, his voice echoing off the walls of the cave. The cave was dark and narrow, the air cool and damp. Their headlamps cast long, flickering shadows on the walls, creating the illusion of movement in the corner of their eyes. Parker led the way, following the twists and turns of the passage, until they reached a large, open chamber. In the center of the chamber was a chest, ancient and covered in dust. Parker approached it slowly, his heart pounding. He knelt down and brushed the dust away, revealing a lock. Rick handed him a crowbar, and with a grunt of effort, Parker pried the chest open. Inside was a collection of old journals, maps, and photographs. Parker picked up one of the journals and opened it, recognizing his grandfather's handwriting. The entries detailed an incredible discovery, a vein of gold richer than anything Parker had ever imagined. But the journals also spoke of strange occurrences, mysterious lights, and the feeling of being watched. As Parker read, a chill ran down his spine. The stories his grandfather had written about matched the rumors he had heard about the Valley of Shadows. It seemed his grandfather had experienced the same fear, the same sense of unease that now gripped Parker. But there was something else in the chest, a letter addressed to Parker. With trembling hands, he opened it. "Dear Parker," the letter read, "if you're reading this, then you have found our secret. The Valley of Shadows is a place of great mystery and great danger, but it is also a place of great reward. The gold is there, waiting to be mined, but you must be careful. The spirits of the valley are restless, and they do not take kindly to intruders. I believe in you, Parker. You have the strength and the courage to succeed where others have failed. Remember, the greatest rewards come to those who face their fears. Good luck, my boy. Love, Grandpa John." Parker felt a surge of emotion. His grandfather had known about the dangers, had faced the same fear, and had left this challenge for him to conquer. He looked around at his crew, their faces reflecting a mix of awe and trepidation. "We're going to do this," Parker said, his voice steady. "We're going to mine this gold, and we're going to do it for my grandfather." The weeks that followed were some of the toughest Parker had ever faced. The valley seemed to resist their presence at every turn. Equipment malfunctioned, the weather turned vicious, and strange noises echoed through the camp at night. But Parker and his crew persevered, driven by the promise of untold riches and the legacy of his grandfather. In the end, their determination paid off. They struck gold, the vein richer than they had ever dreamed. As they celebrated their find, Parker felt a sense of triumph, not just for the gold, but for overcoming his greatest fear. The Valley of Shadows had tested him in ways he had never imagined, but he had emerged victorious. Parker Schnabel had faced his biggest fear and had come out on top. He had honored his grandfather's legacy and had proven to himself and the world that he had the courage to tackle any challenge, no matter how daunting. The gold was a reward, but the real treasure was the strength he had discovered within himself.